Oh, by the way, before I continue, with obscenity, I want to, that's, you might not condition to that word. You know the meaning of obscenity, don't you? Perhaps you don't. See, if I do a disgusting show, or use any disgusting word, or I'm just going to be talking about pork, that's my right, you see, as an American citizen, to discuss pork on stage. Although
In one
disgust, all of
city,
you
a
vegetarians...
woman just holding up a blank piece of paper was taken away by the police, an indication of how they are keen to crack down on anything that looks like a protest.
Has called on Elon Musk to act responsibly after the tech billionaire used his social media platform X to unleash a series of posts that officials say risk inflaming the violent unrest gripping the country. Musk had posted a comment saying that, quote, civil war is inevitable in the UK, and later doubled down, highlighting complaints that the British criminal justice...
John Scopes, a young teacher of Tennessee, had taught, contrary to state law, Darwin's theory of evolution. The Tennessee country people believed this was contrary to biblical doctrine. And Scopes' trial got worldwide publicity, with the Tennessee fundamentalists lined up against the liberals and intellectuals of America. William Jennings Bryan, old and full of oratory, defended the beliefs of the fundamentalists. He was aided...
Everything ready, Fabian? Come on, hurry it up. Come on, bring us the sparkler. As this is Montag's home, I think perhaps he should do the honors. What are you doing in there? You've gone mad. Ah, come on, get back in there. Just the books, the books. What do you think you're doing? There's no need for that. I said the books, Montag. That's good. That's what I like to see. Sweet reason. Novels aren't life. What did Montag hope to get out of all this print? Happiness? What a poor idiot you must have been. This gibberish is enough to drive a man mad. Thought you could learn from these how to walk on the waters. Did you, Mont?
Overnight, San Francisco 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick refusing to stand during the national anthem again. This time, he took a knee right behind hundreds of service members being honored on Military Appreciation Night. As the crowd and players stand, you can see Kaepernick kneeling.
An invasion.
Honestly, I think you should let me run the country. You run CNN.
All right.
And if you did it well, your ratings
Let
would
me
be
ask,
much better.
if I may ask one other question, Mr. President, if I may ask
Peter,
one other
go ahead.
question, are you worried?
That's enough. That's
Mr.
enough.
President,
That's
I was
enough.
going to ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. Mr.
Excuse
President,
me. That's enough.
Mr. President, I had one other
Peter,
question,
let's
if
go.
I may ask, on the Russia investigation. Are you concerned that you may...
Goals of oppression.
In 1937, Picasso was the most famous artist in the world. A prolific innovator of art forms, he had already pioneered Cubism, invented collage, and made major contributions to symbolism and surrealism. And he was just about to create the most powerful anti-war painting in history. Monday, April the 26th, 1937. German warplanes began appearing in the sky above the small Basque village of Guernica. It was 4:30 p.m. and the planes were here on behalf of General Franco's fascist regime and as a macabre rehearsal for the blitzkrieg tactics of World War II. The attack was timed to maximize civilian casualties. For over 3 hours, 25 bombers dropped 100,000 pounds of explosive and incendiary bombs on the village, reducing it to rubble and killing a third of the population. This brutal and unprovoked attack shocked the world. It also inspired Picasso to produce a political painting that is as relevant today as it was when he produced it over 80 years ago. In 1936, a group of right-wing generals launched a military coup on the legally elected Spanish Republic and started the Spanish Civil War. The war had been going on for 6 months when Picasso was given a commission to produce a large-scale mural for the Spanish Republic's pavilion at the 1937 World's Fair in Paris, where Picasso was living. Picasso was famously apolitical and told the Republicans, "I don't do politics." But after months of staring at a blank canvas, he was still struggling to come up with ideas. History intervened, and Picasso found his subject. Like the rest of the world, he opened his newspaper on April the 27th to find devastating images of the bombing of Guernica. Picasso was horrified and frantically started work on new sketches for the commission. He would complete the enormous painting in only 3 weeks. Perhaps Picasso's greatest skill was reinvention. In Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, he played with idealized female beauty, and in Guernica, he would reinvigorate the genre of historical painting. The first thing you notice is the gigantic size. It is 4 meters by 8 meters, or 11 feet by 26 feet, and is one piece of material rather than several canvases sewn together. After Paris, it was to be sent around the world to raise money for Spain. Because of the size, each time it travelled, the canvas had to be removed from the stretcher, rolled up, packed and shipped, again and again. In that sense, we can compare Guernica to portable tapestries known in Spain as sargas. They were used in Spain and other countries from the 15th century as temporary curtains, banners and wall hangings during Lent. Like Guernica, it was propaganda, but of a religious kind. He primed the canvas with several layers of reflective lead white, an antiquated paint base used by Leonardo da Vinci. Picasso wanted a reflective surface to paint on. The ground layer was important as it was to form part of the composition. He used normal household paint with a minimum amount of gloss, so the white parts of the painting are luminous, whereas the blacks are matte black. The speed at which he paints leaves splashes, such as here, and mistakes, adding to the urgency of the painting. The other thing you notice straight away is the absence of colour. But in 1937, people only experienced current events in black and white, and Guernica was as current as you could get. Picasso himself saw the Spanish Civil War play out in black and white in newspapers. and he even gives us a suggestion of torn newsprint in the horse's chainmail. Picasso was the magpie of the art world, with an encyclopedic knowledge of art history. With Guernica, it is these visual references that anchor the work. Peter Paul Rubens was an artist Picasso loved, and Rubens' painting, An Allegory Showing the Effects of War from 1638, is the work that most inspired Picasso's Guernica. If we flip Rubens' painting, we can see the similarities in composition. From left to right, we get a weeping woman with a child in her arms, a flying fury of war holding out a torch, and a woman facing the heavens with outstretched arms. We can also compare the weeping woman to Michelangelo's La Pieta and the flying fury to Proudhon's Allegory of Justice. Goya, an artist Picasso admired, is another inspiration. 3rd of May 1808 also depicts a nighttime massacre. The central figure's pose is reminiscent of the screaming woman, and inevitably both figures can be compared to a crucifixion, and in both paintings we find the sign of the stigmata. There are also comparisons to be made with his own earlier work. But there is more than just iconographic inspiration here. Surprisingly, Picasso's Guernica has no specific references to the actual bombing of the Basque village. He has created a fictitious scene whose intensity evokes the suffering of all wars. Guernica is an allegorical painting, in the same way Rubens' work is an allegorical response to the 30 Years' War. The scene is intentionally chaotic, to evoke the horror and confusion of war. We are thrown into apocalyptic action where characters overlap and intersect. Destruction, violent death, and mutilation are everywhere. Despite Picasso's avant-garde qualities, he trained as a classical artist, and Guernica uses classical language. Despite the chaos, there is in fact a clear visual order. Picasso balances the composition by organizing the figures into 3 vertical groupings, moving left to right, while the central figures are stabilized within a large triangle of light. To the far left, we see a wide-eyed bull with a dark body and white head. The horse and bull are images Picasso used his entire career, part of the life and death ritual of Spanish bullfights. The bull is the only figure that is looking at us, the viewer. Picasso himself thought of the bull as representing brutality and darkness. Its gaze is cold and detached. It has come to be seen as representing fascism or Franco himself. Its tail smoulders like the smoking remains of Guernica. Underneath the bull, a woman is holding a dead child, screaming towards the heavens. Her bare breasts that once fed her child are exposed, and her eyes are in the shape of tears. She is a secular virgin and child tainted by war. Further down lies a dead soldier, representing both futility and hope. His disjointed parts are strewn about the floor. One severed arm carries a broken sword of failure, from which grows a white poppy, the symbol of remembrance and hope. In his other hand, the signs of the stigmata represent the ultimate sacrifice. Between the bull and the horse, we can just about see a dove. Normally a representation of peace, Picasso's version, with its pained expression and broken body, suggests that peace is all but destroyed. The light bulb is the single image of 20th century technology and has multiple meanings. Perhaps it is the eye of God overlooking the madness of war. The more accepted interpretation is that it represents the technology that destroyed Guernica. In Spanish, the word for light bulb is bombilla, which brings to mind the word bomb. The screaming horse at the centre is collapsing from its gaping wound, but its head remains upward as it struggles to live. You can almost hear those ear-piercing screams. Picasso himself saw the terrorized horse as the people of Guernica. The burning woman is perhaps the strongest representation of the painting's anti-war feeling. A woman is trapped in a burning building, pleading at the sky, perhaps to God, perhaps to the German planes to stop the destruction. As she does so, the building continues to burn and crumble around her. Death is inevitable. Another terrified woman with an injured leg, bleeding from the knee and trying to stop the blood with her hand. She is looking longingly towards the oil lamp. It is actually the oil lamp that is the source of light in the scene, and not the electric light bulb. The tiny flame is hope, and it is strong enough to shed light upon the entire scene. It is the only sliver of hope in the painting, and is thought to represent the spirit of the Spanish Republic. Guernica is not supposed to have a singular interpretation. As Picasso said, we all know that art is not truth. Art is a lie that makes us realize truth. Guernica's ambiguity and lack of specific historical detail make the painting timeless.
The Great Paris Exhibition of 1937 is opened by...
Picasso worked on the painting for 35 days and finished it on the 4th of June 1937. When it was unveiled at the Paris Expo, the public reaction was mixed. It was too avant-garde for the Spanish officials, who preferred another more traditional painting that they'd also commissioned, by Horacio Ferrer de Mercado. However, after Paris, Guernica's reputation started to grow steadily as it travelled the world to raise money for the Republican cause. The start of the Second World War made its imagery more recognisable and painfully familiar.
A most eventful year. Spain's 3-year-old civil war ends, and Generalissimo Franco enters Barcelona.
Picasso refused to allow the painting to be seen in Spain while Franco ruled, and Guernica was sent on another tour, this time to the United States to raise money for Spanish refugees fleeing fascism. By 1940, it was at the Museum of Modern Art in New York, where it stayed on semi-permanent display for the next 40 years. Picasso continued living in Nazi-occupied Paris. It is said that when a German officer visited him, he saw a photograph of Guernica on Picasso's wall. He asked Picasso, "Did you do that?" Picasso replied, "No, you did." In New York, Guernica's fame grew, and during the Vietnam War, it became a powerful anti-war symbol. In 1974, a protester defaced the painting with the words "Kill lies all." It created international headlines. Guernica was covered in heavy varnish and the graffiti did no real damage at all. The fact that Guernica inspired such passions was a testament to its enduring power. Picasso died in 1973 at the age of 91. He had produced 50,000 works of art, including 1,885 paintings. While numerous works by Picasso are masterpieces, Guernica stands alone. Franco died in 1975, and with democracy restored, the painting's long exile was over.
La muerte de Franco se consiguió, como digo, en el año 1981 en un vuelo casi secreto que trajo el cuadro.
Even in the 21st century, Guernica was causing controversy. A tapestry of Guernica was put on display at the United Nations. In 2003, then Secretary of State Colin Powell delivered a televised speech at the UN, arguing for war on Iraq. In a form of blatant censorship, the Bush administration requested that the tapestry was covered up. It is extraordinary that over 60 years after its completion, Guernica's message worried even the most powerful nation on earth. No work of art in the 20th century has left its mark in quite the way Guernica has. It has become the universal symbol of indiscriminate slaughter, and it has helped to shape a century. The lessons of Guernica, of universal suffering, have still not been learnt, and that is why Guernica is just as important today as it was in 1937. Guernica is not just contemporary art, it is history.
За активистов вообще.
Вы за активистов?
За активистов, конечно.
Я просто хотела спросить, как вы думаете, если здесь вот просто сказать 2 слова, меня за это сейчас арестуют или нет?
Вас уже задерживают.
Так, кто-то парень идет на рожон. Вышел с пустой бумажкой.
Молодец!
То есть у молодого человека чисто лист бумаги в руках.
American was detained after their officers allegedly found vape cartridges containing hashish oil in her luggage at an airport near Moscow in February. A local news outlet identified that person as WNBA star Brittany Griner. Griner is a championship-winning center for the WNBA's Phoenix Mercury. She was in Russia for work, playing basketball for UMMC Ekaterinburg. Griner reportedly earns over $1 million per season, more than quadruple her WNBA salary. She last played for her Russian team on January 29th, before the league took a 2-week break in early February for the FIBA World Cup qualifying tournaments. The customs agency reportedly says Griner was arrested in February, but they did not give an exact date. Russia's state news channel has aired this photo of Griner. CNN reports it was taken at a Russian police station. It's important since Griner hasn't been seen or heard from in weeks. On January 23rd, the U.S. State Department issued a do not travel advisory for Russia, advising Americans against traveling to the country because of the potential for harassment against U.S. citizens, the embassy's limited ability to assist U.S. citizens
waiting in their glass box for the judge to start reading her verdict. Yekaterina Samutsevich, Maria Alyokhina, Nadezhda Telekonikova chatted together and wondered when they would next see each other and where that would be. Outside, a crowd of supporters gathered. Police showed some tolerance, but they were easily provoked and many were arrested. There were also members of the Russian Orthodox Church. This is why Russia's religious were offended. A 30-second performance in Moscow's main cathedral praying for President Vladimir Putin to go. The judgment took 3 hours to read, and throughout there was little doubt it would find them guilty. The judge frequently referred to their behaviour as insulting and disrespectful to the Orthodox Church and all of Russia's faithful. She criticised their short skirts and high kicks and said they were motivated by hatred for religion. She ruled they remained a danger to society and sentenced them to 2 years. The women smiled but looked a little stunned as people in the court shouted, "Shame." Outside, much of the crowd also reacted angrily. This woman was clearly inspired by Pussy Riot's example. The police waited for her to come down until she pulled on a pink balaclava. The women's families were in court. The father of Yekaterina Samutsevich said his innocent daughter was being sent to jail. Nadezhda Telekonikova's husband said he wasn't surprised by the outcome, despite Vladimir Putin saying he hoped they wouldn't be punished harshly.
Well, 2 years of brutal Russian prison for President Putin is, well, somewhat of a lenient sentence.
Their time served in custody, more than 5 months, will count towards their sentence. It's possible it could be reduced further on appeal. Throughout the trial, the women of Pussy Riot said they didn't regret the action for which they knew they were going to be punished. They also knew it has helped to make them a global brand for protest and dissent.
Received one of the
Phil Black,
harshest
CNN.
sentences in Russia in years. He told a supporter that one day Russia would be free. But he's been ordered to spend the next quarter century behind bars because of speeches like this.
These are war crimes that are being committed by the dictatorial regime in the Kremlin.
This address at Arizona's legislature was just a few weeks after Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Less than 1 month later, Kara-Murza was back in Russia, where he was arrested and later charged with treason. His lawyer says Kara-Murza sees the maximum sentence as a tragic badge of honor. He said, "This is the highest score for what I did, for what I believed in as a citizen and a patriot." Kara-Murza is a British citizen and a permanent resident of the U.S., where his family lives. Despite nearly dying twice after suspected poisonings, he spent years lobbying Western governments to adopt sanctions against Russia's human rights violators. His wife Yevgenia and his other supporters carry on with that work, even though she's now raising their 3 children without their father. She knew just why he felt compelled to return to Russia.
I do respect and admire him because he is who he is and because he behaves in this particular way, although I know what risks this represents to him and to our entire family.
After Kara-Murza's arrest, Canada and the US introduced more sanctions.
Freedom-minded people in this country and all over the world recognize Vladimir Kara-Murza as a man of honor and conscience.
Kara-Murza's family is very worried about his health, saying he's already lost 40 pounds in prison. He suffers from a medical condition which can cause his hands and feet to go numb, symptoms which developed after the 2 suspected poisonings. And his wife fears just what could be done to him in prison. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
Я думаю, что журналисты должны это знать, во всяком случае эксперты это прекрасно понимают. Степень ее влияния на политическую жизнь в стране, в России, была крайне незначительна.
Я мечтаю о том, чтобы он сидел на скамье подсудимых. И самая строгая юридическая процедура с перечислением всех преступлений, с следствием по всем его преступлениям происходила.
And a man called Sergei Kirov is having a great day. Just kidding, he was shot and died. His assassin was a man called Leonid Nikolaev, a member of the Communist Party who may have been acting alone. He also may have been put up to it by a certain someone, which may explain why there was nobody guarding Kirov. Nobody really knows for certain though. Kirov was the chief of the Leningrad Communist Party and was pretty influential, and the murder of such a high-ranking official was unprecedented. And the head honcho Stalin wasn't going to let such a murder go to waste. Stalin took charge of the investigation personally, and after having Nikolaev shot, he determined that the murder was a part of a much larger Communist Party conspiracy against him and the Soviet Union. This meant only one thing. It was time for a purge. A great purge, if you will. Stalin accused his old rivals, Grigory Zinoviev and Lev Kamenev, of being a part of a conspiracy against him which was being led abroad by none other than Trotsky. Zinoviev and Kamenev were both arrested by the head of the NKVD, Genrikh Yagoda. They were put on trial in August 1936, found guilty, and shot. Interestingly enough, both Zinoviev and Kamenev, despite being innocent, admitted to being part of a conspiracy. There are 2 probable reasons that they confessed to crimes that they didn't commit. One being that they knew they were going to die anyway, and so they decided to preserve the party's image. The other being, torture. Stalin had Yagoda demoted and replaced with Nikolai Yezhov, who was always up for a bit of purging. Over the next year, 2 more major trials were held, which saw more high-ranking officials found guilty of treason, the most famous being Mikhail Tukhachevsky. The Great Purge, also known as the Great Terror, spread further across the USSR. Factory managers, military officers, as well as many mid-ranking bureaucrats and party members were also purged in the years following the trials. Purged doesn't necessarily mean shot. Some were taken to the gulags instead, which was much better. Stalin and the higher-ups in the Communist Party ordered communist officials across the USSR to root out traitors and any Trotskyites amongst them. Unsurprisingly, this led to a culture of suspicion developing, which in turn led to people accusing each other of harbouring sympathies for Trotsky. Between 1937 and 1938, over 100,000 Communist Party members were purged and over half of the military high command was shot. Your normal, everyday Soviet citizens weren't spared the horrors of the Great Purge. Across 2 years, over 650,000 people were shot and a further million were sent to the gulags. The reason why so many were found guilty, despite the overwhelming majority not being hardline Trotskyites, was that the NKVD, the secret police, had quotas to fulfill. Some of those rounded up were targeted simply for complaining or disagreeing with party policy. Beyond simply targeting political dissidents, Stalin focused the NKVD on different ethnicities. They were specifically ordered to target Germans because Hitler, as well as Ukrainians. When the USSR's borders expanded in 1939, the peoples in those new territories were also fiercely repressed, with a great emphasis on the Polish. The sheer number of arrests and executions began to take their toll on the Soviet economy, and Stalin decided that enough was enough and that the internal enemies had been defeated. He denounced those who had made false accusations, and in 1939 he threw Yezhov under the proverbial bus and had him arrested, and the next year he was shot. After this, the number of accusations and arrests declined massively, but that didn't mean that anyone felt safe, and that was how Stalin wanted it. The legacy of the Purge was that it cemented Stalin's position as the sole totalitarian leader of the USSR. The purges removed any potential, mostly imagined rivals, but in doing so they weakened the USSR and made resisting Hitler's invasion of 1941 that much harder.
You know, I like to do that because it's classic illustration of the eye of the beholder. Because I watch the people, when I get a lot of rejection, I assume that there's a lot of Jews out here who don't know what I'm doing, think I'm trying to hit them. Or perhaps there's a lot of quasi-Catholics, missionary-trained Catholics, who have no concept of Catholicism and think that Catholics worship statues and symbols. It's not the case. They were hassling, understand this, a mime group were doing their act in the park, and they didn't have a certificate and they got busted. And some freedom of speech issue. Well, I think they missed one point. They were doing their act in front of the Catholic Church. And, see, on stage, in other words, a stripper in a burlesque house on stage goes, "Here it is, boys, da-da-da," it's cool. But let her do that in the public park on the way home and their ass is in jail. And the reason for that is that the people in the park didn't ask for that. In other words, you can yell fire in a crowded theater if you're on stage, but don't do it off stage. The theater is make-believe, that's where it's at. And I figured out after 4 years why I got arrested so many times. See what happened. It's been a comedy of errors. Here's how it happened. I do my act at perhaps 11 o'clock at night. Little do I know that 11 a.m. the next morning, before the grand jury somewhere, there's another guy doing my act who's introduced as Lenny Bruce in substance. Here he is, Lenny Bruce in substance. A peace officer who is trained to recognize clear and present dangers, not make-believe, does the act. The grand jury watches him work and they go, "That stinks." But I get busted. And the irony is that I have to go to court and defend his act. Because he can only defend the complaint. And the judge, who never heard of Lenny Bruce, is going, "No, now hear Lenny Bruce." 6 weeks before the peace officer gets the assignment. And see, well, this relates to the headline that I saw in the Chronicle and also the LA paper. It says, "The Negroes versus the cops." It's about time that the people got hip to something, how the system works in our country, what the cop's position is, and what your position is. You see, if you can reduce the whole community to 100 people, the early tribe, the first law is religious law. We all had a simple rule. Okay, the rule, we sleep in area A. We eat in area B, we throw garbage in area C. All agreed? All agreed. Solid. Go to sleep, guy wakes up, gets a face full of garbage. Hey, what's the deal here? I thought it was A, B, and C. Tell all you people having a big party. I'm all alone. I'm sleeping. I got a face full of garbage. Just, well, it's a religious holiday. No, not religious. It's your ass. Oh. Well, that's not too good a rule. And this guy started the first guy separating the church and the state. Because in the democracy, the rule has no mercy to it. It's just a rule. It stays constant. It's okay, here's the rule now. A, B, and C, and we're going to enforce the rule because we got to get some sleep. Now we'll hire a cop. Policeman, here's your gig. If anybody throws any garbage on us while we're sleeping, you throw their ass right in the shithouse. They live with this garbage, you understand? All right, you take the gig, you do it. So the cop said, what about if it's a guy's aunt? Well, you don't understand. Aunt your ass. We want to get some sleep. Anybody's aunt, mother, brother gets thrown right in the shithouse. That's it. The rule is consistent. Now the other guy goes, okay, that's the rule, but I tell you what, policeman, don't kick their ass, throw them in the garbage, but don't do it when I'm around, okay? I'll go in the next room. But if they do it, throw them right in the garbage and keep them there. You see, I can't do it because I'm too nice a guy. And you see, you got to have a certain mentality to do that to people. So I'll wait in the back room and you kick their ass. All right, good. So what happens, the rule gets bigger and bigger, and the guy says, okay, nobody on the post office steps, that's the rule. Okay, nobody in the street, that's the rule. Rule. Hire the cop. Now, up in Harlem, there's 9,000 people wailing their ass off, sticks and stones. They get a cop with a short-sleeved shirt on and a stick in his hand. And people yelling Gestapo at him. Gestapo, you schmuck, I'm the mailman. What do you want from me?
I call Hannah Ralphie T. Mopey Clark to make her maiden statement.
Tēnara koe e te tika, tēnara tātou e te whare. Ka ngau ki mō kau, ka ngau ki tamaki, ka ru te whenua, ka mate te marama, ka taka ngā whetū i te rangi, ka ara wai kato i te rua, au e ha, ha!